But my final point is that God invites us to trust his generosity. Not only does he call us into his service, not only does he promise to pay us what is right and says, don't try and work it out yourself, trust me. Finally, he says, trust my generosity. He says to them here at verse 8, that evening he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those who hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those who hired first came to get their pay, they what? Assumed that they would what? Receive more. Why? Because they work longer and they're standing at the back of the queue and they're looking up, ooh, this is looking good. The guy said he was generous. Look, the front guys, they didn't go in, they got that much and they got that much. So by the time it should be here, inflation, interest, how many hours? Yeah, this is good. I'm in a good spot. So their expectation was based on what they saw. They thought, we're in the best position. This is going to be fantastic. And so as the landowner's coming down the line, they're getting excited because they're like, it's going to be great. But they forgot one thing. They'd already agreed right at the beginning for a denarius for the day. And they'd already done their negotiations. The first guys at the head of the queue, who were actually the last, they just like, okay, we'll do whatever. Let's go. We'll work it out. They were happy. They had no expectation. They were pleased. Hey, a denarius, that's pretty good. We only came in the last half of the day. Fantastic. But these that came first, they were really messed up. And they say in verse 11, when they received their pay, they protested. Hey, what have you done? You've made us equal. In their thinking, you've made us equal. They were busy comparing all the way through this day. Busy comparing. We did better than you. We did more than you. We were more skilled than you. We worked longer hours than you. I think this is a stench in the Lord's nostrils. What does it speak of? It speaks of self-righteousness. I'm doing a good job. You should pay me more. What are you doing, God? What are you doing? Don't you see that guy? He's always late for worship practice. Always. I'm always on time. Hello? Right? We do that in the church and we get very self-righteous and we think I'm better than those. I did more than those. I deserve something extra than those because somehow I rate myself as a better person. But God tells us we are not to compare. If you look at Psalm 73, it says that if you compare yourself to unbelievers, you'll be depressed. Some of us, we're angry that our unbelieving friends are doing better than us. We're upset. That comparison is not good. Some of us compare with other believers. Come with me to John 21, verses 20 to 23. Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple that Jesus loved, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during the supper. Verse 21. Peter asked Jesus, what about him, Lord? Because Peter had just been told, Peter, you're going to be crucified. You're going to be crucified upside down. You're going to be led where you don't want to go. The end of your life's going to be pretty miserable. And Peter's like, okay, thanks. That's fabulous. And then he turns to the Lord and he says, well, what about him? What's going to happen to him? Do you know, Lord, he's been calling himself the one that you love the most, right? What are you going to do with him? And what does Jesus say in verse 22? If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You follow me. In other words, none of your business. None of your business, Pete. My deal with John is my deal with John. What I'm doing with you is what I'm doing with you. What I'm doing with Pastor is what I'm doing with Pastor. What I'm doing with you is what I'm doing with you. Stop comparing. Stop measuring. Stop looking up and down and saying, how come this one? How come that one? How come? And Jesus very nicely, well, maybe not that nicely, says, what is it to you? It's not important. You are to fix your eyes upon me. You're to fix your eyes on what I'm calling you to do. You're not to look to the left or the right. You're not to compare to unbelievers. You're not to compare to believers, but you're to put your faith and trust in me. And if he has a different situation to you, it's okay. That doesn't mean that you got the short straw. It doesn't mean that you're less loved. It doesn't mean that somehow you lucked out, because this isn't heaven yet. We're not up for the award ceremony yet. That comes later. So Peter here has a very hard lesson to learn, that his ministry life, his walk with the Lord, his things, his ups and downs are going to look different to somebody else's. So can I encourage you, don't compare yourself to one another. Don't compare yourself to one another in this body or or people outside of this body, or people in other countries. The truth is, all those things are meaningless. God can prosper you, be generous with you, make a way for you, open a door for you, do anything. Do you think God is only limited by geography? No, he says, come and work in my vineyard. Answer my call. Hear what the Spirit is saying. Hear what I'm calling you to. Some of you may go to those places. Some of you may stay here. Some of you may have prominent ministry. Some of you may have ministry that seems insignificant. But when the first are last and the last are first, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it's all going to get mixed up in the final wash of things. So he says, what I want you to do is trust me. Don't look and say, what's in it for me? Peter said that. He said, what's in it for us, God? Jesus was so kind to him. Instead of sort of slapping him on the face and said, listen, buddy, just get with the plan. He tells this parable. He says, well, the kingdom of heaven is like.